keep calling him Daddy Dagon, and I just can't stop. Welcome back, everybody. It's Loctavian here at the Loctopus Party. This is part 2 of our Lore Sports events, where I got together with Avron Doodles from UESP and Lotus of Doom from the Tales of Tamriel podcast and the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, and we debated with each other which of the Daedric Princes was the absolute greatest of all time using a seeded sports tournament format. You can find links to Avron and Lotus in the description below. In this video, we are tackling the bottom half of the tournament, our number 2 seed, Hermes Moro, and other fan favorites to see who is going to move on to the quarterfinals. Before you watch the video, if you could take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, it would really help us out in making more fabulous lore content. Hermes Moro. And Hermes Moro is taking on Periite.
You know, this is unfair. This is so unfair to the poor Taskmaster because this isn't even a competition. It's not. Canonically, Periite is the weakest of the Daedric Princess, right? He is. Sorry. And then he's going up against Hermes Moro, the demon of knowledge, who just has so much going for him that I'm sure Lotus could literally do an entire podcast if he hasn't already. This is Lotus's realm. He knows so much more here. Like Periite, hey, you know what? He's a great prince. It's really crazy that he's able to convince his worshippers to take on like diseases. Like that just blows my mind. But I don't think he holds a candlestick to Hermes Moro. So it goes without saying. And I'm just going to give the floor to Lotus so he can fanboy.
By a mile, I would say Hermes Moro. I won't just needlessly fanboy here to start with, but so the one benefit I will give to Periite, because Periite largely sucks, he does have probably one of my favorite Daedric artifacts with Spellbreaker. I think that shield looks awesome cosmetically. It's what I always use that shield whenever available. It's a very cool shield, but being the master of mundane tasks and the potential to give people like a cold is not super great. Like you're not bringing a lot to the table against anyone at that point. He's more of an inconvenience Daedra when you're against him than anything else. And then you have Hermes Moro, which is one of the Daedra, and he's made of the scraps of like the knowledge of the creation of the world, and his artifacts are basically some of the most useful. All these things provide you so much knowledge if you can hold it together and not go insane as a side effect. Basically just provide you the solutions to any problem you could run into, which seems like one of the biggest benefits other than a competition of raw strength you could get. So useful artifacts, super cool non-gendered blob eyeball smoky thing, which I love the design. Or if you go back further to Oblivion or Daggerfall, he looks like a potato crab, which is also really funny. So I love his designs as opposed to a wannabe dragon, which is just like less cool Alkosh looking dragon. Not great. not doing it on that front. There's not many more things I can possibly say good about Moro. And I mean, Periite's got that shield.
In the 5th age, in the time of Skyrim, Periite gets together all the followers who believe in Periite, which is a very small number of people, to try to spread a plague. Periite, disease, tasks, very, very important, but also very much the middle manager of the Daedra. And it's already been said before, but Hermes Moro, Aedra, meaning like eldest, was already mentioned with Nocturnal as well. Also, Apocrypha, and I know all the Daedra are going to be very powerful in their own realms, but Apocrypha is a terrifying plane of it's a mountain of tentacles and floating pages where the souls of people who sought knowledge are trapped forever, gathering more knowledge for him, and he has seekers to make sure like that happens. Like that's Hermes Moro. Poor Periite, I don't think they could have won against anybody, but going against Hermes Moro is like that is like a child trying to go box Mike Tyson. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was a first round bye for Hermes Moro.
Yeah. To number 7 seed Hersine taking on Mafala.
This is another one that I think could be kind of close because they're too common, but at the same time, not overly aggressive. Daedric, like, I feel like they're a little more grounded than some of the other ones that are these omnipotent super creatures, or again, a box of Kleenex. Mafala, she's got her cults, so to speak. Is Mafala involved with more than we even realize Mafala's involved? Because we might not even realize it, since that's the point. Her scene, on the other hand, is incredibly straightforward. It's competition rules, and we got to make this fair, which very respectable, especially from a mortal standpoint, because he's not going to just tear out your organs for sport. It's like, well, no, we got to make sure that you have a fighting chance at this. So from a mortal standpoint, I understand the reasoning why a lot of people in Tamriel would pray to Hircine. Hircine's definitely one of the more, even though he's very cut and dry, pretty fair in the grand scheme of things compared to anybody else. And that, I think, unfortunately, when you're playing against somebody who is not going to be looking to play fair, Mafala, you're not going to fare that well unless you stoop to that level. The concern is that if he's always playing by his own standards, and Mafala will bend whatever rules and bring in whatever backup she can to spin this web of, winning this quote unquote fight, that's going to be the one that wins it.
I really was looking for, in my mind, a way for Hircine to win. I love Hircine. He is fair. He is the Lord of the Hunt, werewolves and all of that. His rules might not match up with the mortal sense of fairness, but it all falls very much within a constructed, this is how the hunt goes, this is how things are going to be. And we don't know a lot about Mafala because Mafala is the web spinner. She's obscured to mortals, so that means Mafala is constantly not just manipulating mortals and the way things are going, but definitely consistently manipulating the other Daedra. We've never been given a lot of insight into how that's impacted Tamriel, but I think if you have somebody who's known as the web spinner who is manipulating the other Daedric princes possibly to create situations, that is, again, the sort of person who can very easily take somebody as straightforward as Hircine and manipulate them into a situation where they're just going to lose.
I think Hircine has a lot going for him. And I think one of the points, that isn't often pointed out in discussions is he doesn't actually actively try to get worshipers, which a lot of the Daedric princes do. They go out and they try to convince people hey, look at all the stuff we're doing or not doing, follow us. Hircine's literally just involved in the hunt. But despite not even going after mortals, he still has one of the largest mortal followings. So he definitely has that going for him. Now, maybe it's because of the law of fair hunt, right? Which is his whole no cheating, equal things. I agree with Lotus, that is really appealing to mortals. But I kind of agree with all the points previously made with Mafala. I think Hircine is kind of in, he's single, he's in the hunt, right? He's attributed to werebeast, right? And on the hunting grounds, he hunts everything. It could be other Daedra, it could be people, it could be animals, but that's just his purpose. He's all about that spirit of, hunting and sportsmanship. He's a sportsmanship guy. But Mafala's in it for the long run, but nobody knows how. And I the whole aspect of her being, the web spinner and just, how intricately all those threads are unwoven together to make whatever, mechanism she wants kind of it to influence towards in the end. I think she has that going for her. I personally like Hircine more, but I think in the long run, the vote would have to go to Mafala because she's sneaky and I don't trust her. So I'm putting her ahead of me, She's kind of like a poster Daedric Prince. She just gets involved with mortal affairs for her own personal amusement. And if that doesn't scream Daedric Prince, I don't know what does.
Daddy Dagon versus Namira. Every time Maroon's Dagon does something, every failure is actually a step forward. He learns something, something has changed, something has been impacted. The next attempt is different, it's better. He fails again. He's done a lot of damage, he's made a lot of headway, and he's back to thinking. So whereas Molag Bal is the mid-boss, the 80s Skeletor, Maroon's Dagon is, in my opinion, like the very scary final boss who's actually very calculating, even in these very like brash attacks like the Oblivion Crisis. Also, he's got 8-pack abs now. So, however, he is taking on Namira, who is the Sphere of Ancient Darkness, Lady of Decay. She's associated with a lot of things, being associated with like darkness, but you also have Nocturnal. I just feel like Namira is actually very cool, very scary, and gets into a lot of things that are really important and manipulative. But Daddy Dagon is Daddy Dagon and has consistently almost destroyed the works of like Lorcan from the beginning, and I just have to go with him.
Much like we had the 80s villain in Molag Bal, we have a similar type of thing with Dagon. He's been the main antagonist. There's the Oblivion Crisis, where he basically decides to jump in and wreck house. The thing is, Dagon most frequently gets referenced as the Lord of Destruction and all these things. But the big problem is it's very rarely referenced, and it's one of the things that I always think is coolest about Dagon is he was originally referred to a concept behind hope because of his situation where he's also the Prince of Revolution. And revolution, it could be a good thing back in the times of the aliens, where they're just enslaving all of humanity. And we've got gut gardens and all these horrific events where experiments are being performed. And on that level, his destruction is overturning the status quo of these horrible, cruel masters, allowing everybody kind of an even footing. Now, granted, it causes 10,000 other issues as a result of that as well. So it might have been well-intentioned, but didn't work out how planned. But it's not just, I like to ruin things for the sake of ruining things. It's more of whoever's in charge, this needs to be overthrown, which is both a good and a bad thing. It's great if the people in charge are awful. It's terrible if the people in charge are great. He's almost like chaotic neutral. It doesn't matter who's in charge. They just shouldn't be in charge. He loses in Elder Scrolls 4. You shut him out. You stop the Oblivion Crisis. However, later on down the line, we've lost Martin Septim. That line is basically borked. The dragon fires are out. Well, suddenly the Empire starts to fall apart. The Empire had been in charge for a while. Was him failing actually him succeeding? It's hard to tell because the status quo was changed. So did he get defeated or did he actually win? It's a weird situation where the reason I'm kind of focusing so much on Dagon is the fact that I think it's hard to tell whether you could even beat Dagon in most cases, because his long plays can take a really long time to come about, and it could result from him losing that causes him to win. So I feel Dagon is like almost like an underrated threat, since he does seem to lose a lot, but I'm not sure he actually does. Namira is very, very interesting. In many cases, Namira is almost like an amalgamation of several other Daedric princes, like you had mentioned. In Khajiit myth, it was actually Namira that was the one to corrupt Lorcash. So that's no joke. If true, Namira kind of has some dark dealings to the point that you can corrupt other godlike entities. But I would imagine if Namira got a focus that really wanted to to say a situation, like before, could she corrupt a situation and use Dagon to her advantage by putting somebody in power that would intentionally get overthrown, but then do something else she wanted? I would still give it to Dagon, even though maybe there's more there that could be used, but we just haven't seen enough of it that I would pick that over Dagon.
I think there's a lot to be said for Namira, both in and out of Khajiit lore. I know, like, she's kind of like referenced, she's also kind of like a shadowy kind of Daedra, right? And a lot of times she's credited with like her makings are of eternity. Like that's a pretty big deal. But like Dagon's influence on Nirn is just, you can't escape it. I mean, and Lotus brought up the point I was going to make too, with the whole him actually coming to the Imperial City, the whole end of the Third Era, like the ripple that set across Tamriel for mortals is so large that it just can't be downplayed. I mean, you have the Dragonfires are out, yeah. The Septim Dynasty is done, right? Tamriel falls into absolute chaos. You have like, the Mages Guild, magic gets this bad rep from the Oblivion Crisis. Obviously, you have like the rise of the Thalmor. It's just there's so many things that come there that it's just like, yeah, he did lose, but like at what cost? And we talked about last round, like Mafala, like, pulling threads and just kind of getting what she wants. I think Dagon's kind of that same way. So I'm definitely going to go with him. I think all the points, I agree with them. They're all points that I was going to make. So, I mean, I guess Daddy Dagon wins.
Before we get to round 2, our final first round fight is the 6th seed. He's the party animal Sanguine versus Vaymina.
Some of these matchups, it's like they were destined to be. I feel like if you're at a Sanguine party too long, you're going to end up dealing with Vaymina because you're drunk. And you're just hungover and God knows what you're going to dream while you're smashed on the couch. So like the fact that these two just happen to sync up is pretty funny, but I like Sanguine. Sanguine is a funny Daedric Prince, but for the most part, Sanguine seems like Sanguine just does not give an F about anything in the situation more often than not, where it's just debauchery and all these ridiculous scenarios. And much like the goofy, jovial side of Sheogorath, Sheogorath is actually pretty dark, especially in a lot of the side stories and stuff like that. We've mentioned the 16 accounts of madness several times, where some of the Sheogorath has a very dark, like mental illness side that's not funny. It's just horrifying, like sociopath horrifying. And Sanguine's almost just the jokey side, or at least it seems that way in almost all of his situations. Whereas Vaymina, I don't really know, other than Vaymina likes just horrifying people, I'm not really sure what Vermina's ever trying to do other than just scare people and make them afraid of things. So I guess as a result of that, I mean, she can do more damage. Just because she could probably snap people's psyche. She's just like, she's more threatening from that standpoint, whereas Sanguine just seems like somebody I would go to the bar with. I don't know. I've never gotten anything. His appearance does not match his motif whatsoever. He looks like, he's kind of a stereotypical looking Dremoro, which as a de facto thing, it's like, oh, they're demons. These are your generic hellspawn demons. Except he, hands you a mug of ale and then gets you hammered, and it's just like that. All of his things are jokey and goofy, and it's just like, oh, what hijinks did Sanguine come up, get us into last night? Whereas at least Vamina's terrifying and something like that. So I'd say Vaymina, just because I think she'd actually care. Whereas I'm not sure Sanguine would be like sober enough to really give a shit for very long.
You've covered all like the most important points, I think. I'm gonna cover the two things in Sanguine's favor, even though my vote's not gonna go with Sanguine. One, we all talk about how great when we see Mephala, like Mephala dress sometimes, and Mephala did commission Sanguine to craft those clothings. So, you know, he's not just a party animal. He is the like official fashion designer of Daedra who want to have style. And well, that's not a very powerful thing. It's you know, something in his favor.
It's more direction than I had realized that he had.
Yeah, he wants to party and have a good time. And he doesn't really care. Maybe he has duties somewhere he's got to take care of, but he's not going to do them. He's going to get you real drunk. You're probably going to eat a giant's toe. Whereas, yeah, Vermina just purely being the mistress of nightmares makes me go, okay, like, I think Vermina wins. I think Vermina goes, nightmarish creatures. I'm going to go ahead and use the Skull of Corruption, all these things. And I think Sanguine just goes, oh no, I lost.
I think they're two sides of a similar coin, like some of the other matchups. It's funny. It is funny how they got paired up for this. It's like,
right.
One just appeals to the part of us that just wants to have fun and party, and the other is like our literal dreams, right? And then the things we fear. You know, and you know, one throws parties that are so great you might have to commit suicide to leave, and the other just kind of messes with your head while you're sleeping or not sleeping. However, you know, Sanguine does have a wine that supposedly controls the dead. I don't know if anyone knew that.
I did not know that.
That's
I
actually
forgot about that.
Yeah, right. Like that's kind of cool. However, like, I don't know. This is a tough one because he does have a lot of really cool stuff going for him. Like, yeah, okay, I guess he gets a rep as like a party boy. But if you think like his artifact, right, his rose staff artifact, I mean, that's so enticing that even Martin Septim fell for that one. And he's like, oh, where'd you get this? Like, I remember this. Martin was a party boy. Who knew?
Yeah, he partied so hard with Sanguine. Afterwards, he had to devote himself to Akatosh. He was just like, I've lived too hard. I've partied too hard. It's Akatosh, I'm here now, bud. Yeah.
So I think he has a lot going for him, but personally, I'm more afraid of my nightmares. Like, I think that's just a very human fear, you know, of like the things we dream and like the things we just that terrify us and keep us up at night. So I'm going to go for Vermina, I think, as well.
All right, so that is our first round. Well, there you have it. The bottom half of the bracket is done. Our preliminary rounds are over. No surprise to anyone, Daddy Dagon and Hermes Moro are moving on. Next up, we're going to have the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. So stay tuned for the next video in which we truly find out who is the GOAT of the Daedric Princes.